Hello, beautiful souls. Today, I wanted to share the Ayurvedic approach to women's health and hormones, specifically transitioning through menopause. Have you ever wondered why some women thrive through menopause while others struggle? And the secret lies in understanding your hormones through the wisdom of Ayurveda. And recently, I've seen so many women coming into my clinic with hormonal symptoms due to perimenopause or menopause. And it is getting warmer, it is getting hotter. So, yes, one of those symptoms that I am seeing a lot of is those nasty hot flushes and a bit of brain fog and all the things. So, we're going to get into that today. So, we ask, how can we make this transition as smooth as possible? How can we step into our higher self through menopause? And I have come up with my higher self methodology for holistic success, which is what I use with all of my clients on my hormonal program. Or even in my Ayurveda Alchemist Academy. And to really step into your higher self, I've come up with these three pillars that we need to obtain through this transition. And the first one is health alchemy. So, looking at our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and dharmic health. And then we have the empowered mind paradigm. So, those self belief shifts for holistic success and for this transition period, because we are going through a transition period and stage of life from perimenopause through to menopause. And of course, dharmic impact. So connecting back to self and back to purpose. This is one thing that sounds a little bit odd and a lot of health practitioners might not speak about, but it is one crucial step I have found in a lot of my clients, that when they go through this transition period, they start to lose or have an identity shift, and they can feel quite lost within themselves. This is also true for new mothers. When we go from not having children and then we first become mothers, we have this sort of identity shift as well, and even through that transition into puberty. So there's a little bit of a delay in my slides. Sorry for the pauses. But what is happening to our hormones in menopause? Let's start by understanding what's happening through this transition period. Now, this phase from having a cycle is known as perimenopause and can start as early as your 40s and lead all the way up to menopause, which is officially reached when we haven't had a menstrual period for 12 months. So you are deemed in menopause if you haven't had a natural period within 12 months and you do not have the estrogen, progesterone levels to support that. There are hormonal shifts and changes that happen in this transition. And one of those is estrogen fluctuations. Estrogen is one of the key hormones that regulates our reproductive system. And during perimenopause, estrogen levels, they don't just drop steadily. A lot of people think that, oh, I'm going to go through menopause, it starts at perimenopause, and my estrogen levels will just slowly start to decline. But that doesn't actually happen. They fluctuate. So they cause those highs and lows that can feel like an emotional roller coaster, and a whole plethora of symptoms can occur. It's not just this beautiful steady decline, it is an up and down roller coaster. And those who know what I'm talking about. So there are symptoms that relate to this estrogen decline. And some of these common symptoms include hot flushes, night sweats, and vaginal dryness. These happen because estrogen also helps regulate our body temperature and maintain tissue lubrication. So, obviously, when we're having these fluctuations, our temperature thermostat is dysregulated, and so is our lubrication in our tissues, including our joints. And that's why, osteoarthritis and joint pain, frozen shoulder, like, are really common symptoms of that menopause transition as well. And when we look at it from an Ayurvedic perspective, we're also moving from more of a pitta phase of life into a vata phase of life, which is also associated with that dryness and temperature dysregulation. We also have a decline in our progesterone. And progesterone balances the effects of estrogen and helps regulate our menstrual cycle. The decline of progesterone often starts earlier than the drop in estrogen. And that's why in perimenopause, we often see, or you may have heard of the term estrogen dominance. And so we get a lot of signs and symptoms of estrogen dominance in our perimenopausal women because our progesterone starts to decline before our estrogen. And our estrogen really just starts to fluctuate a lot. Now, the associated symptoms with lower levels of progesterone can lead to irregular periods, a heavier menstrual flow, and sleep disturbances. A lot of women I've seen lately have come in saying, I'm just not sleeping very well at all. And I'm so exhausted, but I'm not sleeping very well. And that can be due to cortisol imbalance or definitely a progesterone imbalance as well, or not even an imbalance, because we've got to remember that the transition from perimenopause through to menopause is natural. It doesn't mean it's an imbalance, it's a natural progression through life and a natural change in our hormones. Now, progesterone has that calming effect on the brain. So, this can also cause sleep disturbances as well as mood shifts. So, many women start experiencing more difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep because the calming effect of progesterone isn't happening, and also those mood changes as well. Now, we also have changes in our testosterone levels. So you might think that testosterone is not really a female hormone, but it's actually really important for women, particularly when it comes to maintaining muscle mass, libido, and energy levels. So when we're feeling really depleted, we've got no energy, we've got no sex drive, and we start to have our muscle mass starts to diminish, that is because of the changes in our testosterone level as well. And so when we have lower levels of testosterone, we might find that we just don't feel genuinely, oh my gosh, as well. We don't have like that sort of vitality, that youthfulness that we once had. So, if you are experiencing feelings like this, or decrease in muscle tone, libido, and just, yeah, general vitality, it could be that your testosterone has started to decline as well. So let's get into these symptoms that we are experiencing. Now, hot flushes and night sweats, as I said, is a very common experience for women going through this transition. Up to 75% of women can experience hot flushes during perimenopause. These sudden feelings of heat can occur at any time of day and often come with sweating, palpitation, so a bit of heart palpitations, and flushing. Night sweats are hot flushes that occur during the sleep and often disrupt the rest. We can get a lot of excessive sweating in the evening as well. And from a Chinese medicine point of view, this is seen as a yin deficiency. Often women will complain about weight gain. They've been doing all the things, eating beautifully, they're still exercising, and nothing's really changed in their diet or lifestyle, but they just keep putting on weight. They find it harder to maintain their usual weight during perimenopause. And this is partly due to a slower metabolism and changes in fat distribution, with more weight usually accumulating around the abdomen. It is also thought to be related to increased insulin resistance due to fluctuating estrogen levels. Now, these increased insulin resistance also will impact our cortisol levels. And due to our hormones having a beautiful communication pathway that can often break down during this phase of life, we have to also be mindful that we're less resilient to stress and stress hormones. So, with the insulin resistance, can also impact our cortisol level, and our fluctuating sex hormones impacts our cortisol level, but then our cortisol level will impact our progesterone levels. So, we're kind of like in this phase where there's a little bit of miscommunication happening with the hormones to try to balance everything. But if we're going under a lot of external stresses, then that impact is going to be seen even more so on the body. And when we have this constant level of higher cortisol, we tend to gain weight, especially around the midsection as well. So that's another reason why we often see the weight gathering around the midsection in the body at this stage of life. So it's more important than ever to really manage our stress. Also, with those fluctuating hormones, it's common to experience mood swings, irritability, and even depression. These shifts can also be exacerbated by the poor sleep and, like I said before, stress. Women who have suffered with PMDD, so that's premenstrual dysphoric disorder, they have a tendency to have a natural reaction to the fluctuation of their hormones, particularly progesterone. So they can have hormones within normal ranges, but it's the fluctuation in those progesterone levels that can cause those mood swings and emotional changes. And in perimenopause, that can also be exacerbated for women who have PMDD, those fluctuating hormones. Another really big sign and symptom that I see a lot of is fatigue. So, hormonal imbalances, disturbed sleep, and the body's changing energy's needs can all contribute to feeling constantly tired or burnt out, as well as that mental fatigue of thinking, like, what's going on with me? Why do I look different? Why do I feel different? So, mental fatigue can be just as or more exhausting than physical fatigue that we put ourselves through. Now, from an Ayurvedic perspective, we can understand these hormonal changes, recognizing that the symptoms are they're just not in our heads. They're the body's natural response to shifting levels of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. But with this understanding, we can also take steps to support our bodies through this transition. So first of all, we need to understand we're not going crazy. It's not an illness, it's not abnormal. We are naturally going through a shift, which is normal, but this shift can cause symptoms in our body if we do have an imbalanced state. And so, from an Ayurvedic perspective, we look at this through the concepts of the doshas, the concepts of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and how imbalances in these doshas can manifest as menopausal or perimenopausal symptoms. So, when we have an imbalance in the Vata dosha, it may produce more insomnia, anxiety, and sort of dry skin, the dryness. So, someone who is more of a Vata dominant dosha will have more of these symptoms. Someone who is more of a Pitta dosha, they may lead to symptoms such as those intense hot flushes, the irritability, the inflammation in the body. And someone who is more of a Kapha dosha, they may result more in the weight gain, the lethargy, the fluid retention. We look at the principles of Ayurveda in this transition as the Ayurvedic transition from womanhood to the wise womanhood. And I know in our modern culture, we often see this transition as I mentioned, a loss of identity or a bit of a burden, or we're not seen as relevant anymore. Whereas this is actually seen as a beautiful transition in Ayurveda. This is where you really step into a deeper connection with self, your spirituality, and your wise womanhood, and you're a respected woman of the community. But it also suggests that we need to adopt our seasonal routines, so our Richarya and our Dinacharya, which is our daily routines, to one that is a nourishing routine that supports Vata and balances the other doshas that come into play with our personal constitution. So why I've said that everyone needs to support Vata is because from the perimenopausal phase, it's a very pitta phase of life, and we're transitioning into a vata phase of life as we go into menopause. So everyone needs to nourish vata, but then we have our own individual constitution where we're maybe more vata, pitta, or kapha. And so we need to really have routines that support our individual constitution as well. We look at herbs and diet. So there's Ayurvedic herbs like shatavari, which is really beautiful for hormonal support and can help with the hot flushes and feeling more lively and vital and all of those wonderful things. Black cohosh is another really beautiful herb that can help with the hormonal flushes. Ashwagandha is beautiful for reducing stress, and Brahmi is really beautiful for that mental clarity. We know that we can experience brain fog with a hormonal shift as well. And then we look at specific diets depending on our individual constitution. So for Vata, we want more of a warming, grounding foods. For Pitta, we may need some more cooling and calming foods. And for Kapha, maybe we need more light and stimulating foods. Now, I want to say that for the herbal support, it is always, always wise to see a practitioner. Don't just go and self-prescribe herbs, because herbal medicine is very strong medicine and they're generally prescribed due to your individual constitution, not just your signs and symptoms. Now, some practical tips that we can infuse into our rituals and our daily routine would be a daily self massage with warm sesame oil. Now, this is what we call a self abhyanga, and I've had so many menopausal clients that have implemented this into their routine. They absolutely love it because it's a way of connecting back to their body, appreciating their body, but it has really helped with their hot flushes. And again, we can medicate that oil with different herbs or different essential oils depending on their constitution, their individual constitution. Calming teas, some beautiful chamomile tea, lavender tea. There's some beautiful teas out there that you can implement into your daily routine. Meditation, yoga poses like child's pose, which will balance vata. So any of those sort of grounding poses to really balance that vata. And then restorative practices like specific breathwork techniques. So Nadi Shodhana, or alternate nostril breathing, really helps to balance the masculine and feminine energies and to help calm the mind. But a beautiful one that I like to share for women who are experiencing hot flushes is called Shitali. And this one really helps to cool the body. And what you do with Shitali is you curl your tongue, or like you're going to sip through a straw, and you slowly inhale through the mouth, through the curled tongue, and then slowly exhale out through the nose. And you can actually feel that cool air coming in and nourishing the body. So that's a really good one that you can do if you're experiencing hot flushes. Now, moving on to the empowered mind paradigm. So we've spoken a bit about health alchemy. Now, there's a whole lot more to go into, but we don't have all day. So I'm going to go through these pillars quite quickly, but hopefully giving you guys some really good takeaway tips as we go through. The second one is empowered mind paradigm. So let's talk about the mindset shifts that are necessary for transitioning through menopause, especially in a culture that often views this stage of life as a decline. In the West, menopause is frequently associated with loss of youth, fertility, and even identity. But Ayurveda offers a different perspective, seeing this transition not as an ending, but as an opportunity for renewal and empowerment. So shifting mindset in the West is sometimes occurs because of challenging cultural perceptions. As I mentioned, Western cultures, they tend to emphasize the youthful body and the reproductive function, overlooking the value and wisdom that actually comes with age. I know for me, I was all about, oh God, turning 40, that makes me sound so much older. But when I actually turned 40, I just stepped into this new power. I felt really content in my life. I felt wise, and I really felt that there was a certain wisdom that comes with this age. And when you go through menopause, which is even, generally later than 40, 40 is sort of more of that perimenopause phase, it's often seen as a decline or something to be feared, but it can be this beautiful renewal of self. And that is where Ayurveda steps in. It sees menopause as a natural phase of life that marks a transition into a period of wisdom and spiritual growth. It's when women can shift their focus from nurturing others to actually nurturing themselves and reconnecting to that inner power. And this is where that wisdom piece comes into play. Another mindset shift we need to really make is embracing the renewal of self. So instead of viewing menopause as the end to something, we can embrace it as a time for renewal. It's an opportunity to shed all of those old identities that we had and redefine ourselves based on our own values and purpose. So if you were caught up in any identities that you didn't particularly like, or any self-imposing beliefs you put on yourself, now is such a beautiful time to really break free from those and base your identity on your values and your purpose. This period of transformation is akin to nature's cycles, the shedding of leaves in autumn to make way for new growth in spring. And this is exactly what you are doing through this transitional phase. And you can also use your identity as a reimagined identity where you rediscover your dharma, and dharma is right action. It's likened to your connecting back to your purpose and your true self. And menopause is a time where you can step back and reassess your life's purpose or your dharma. It's a chance to go beyond the roles that society has imposed, like being a mother, a wife, or a career woman, and now reconnecting to the deeper calling within. So, what truly matters to you now? What passion and aspirations have you put on hold for so long? This is a time to explore those and really step into those. And you do it with more power and more certainty. It's that wisdom of coming of age. Now, understanding, we look at the role that Ayurvedic psychology also plays in menopause, right? And so understanding the mind through Ayurveda is perhaps a different approach. Ayurveda provides profound insights into the mind through concepts like chitta, which is our consciousness, samskaras, which are mental impressions that have been left on our chitta mind or our subconscious mind through different events or traumas that have happened to us, and our ahamkara, our ego. These different levels of the mind play a significant role in how we experience life transitions, including menopause. And when we can really work with this transitional phase, we actually can activate more of our buddhi mind, which is our higher intellect, that wise womanhood. Chitta is our field of consciousness where thoughts, feelings, and memories reside. And during menopause, unresolved samskaras, those mental impressions from past experiences, may surface, causing that emotional turbulence or even anxiety. But this is meaning that this is coming to the surface and it's time to reevaluate those and to learn the truth about self, which is one of pure beauty and wisdom, and knowing that our truth that maybe we've held on for so long isn't the actual truth. We can release some of those samskaras so we can really step into this phase of life with confidence and without resentment and just releasing anything that no longer serves us. When we look at the ahamkara, or often named the ego, it can become very active at this stage, resisting change and clinging on to those old identities that we just spoke about. This resistance can create mental stress and emotional imbalance, especially when coupled with those hormonal shifts, because we know there is a physiological function happening in our body that is creating shifts in our brain chemistry as well. But once we can understand this, we know that the ahamkara part of our mind, as well as these physiological responses are happening, we can start to understand that the true self of us is in there, and we really just need to find that and let that free, let that go. We need to work with that buddhi, that higher intellect mind. And as I've mentioned, multiple times about us having our individual constitution, which will also play into the role of this transition. We need to learn how these doshic imbalances can affect our mind. As I said, in Ayurvedic psychology, imbalances in the mind, they're linked to disturbances of the doshas, so the vata, pitta of kapha. And so if we are more vata inclined, then an imbalance in vata can lead to anxiety, scattered thoughts, insomnia. Vata's light and mobile qualities will increase feelings of instability, making it harder to stay grounded. These are the women that often feel very, very anxious and very uncertain in this time of transition. A woman who has a pitta imbalance through this transition will be more irritable. They can anger quicker. They can feel very frustrated a lot of the time. Pitta's fiery nature can exacerbate feelings of heat, so both physically in the form of the hot flushes, but also emotionally and mentally. And the kapha will manifest in low moods, lethargy, attachment to the past, so attachment of what was. And the heavy qualities of kapha make it harder to embrace the change. They feel really stuck, like they don't know how to move through it. So, there are some mindful practices for mental balance to address these imbalances. Ayurveda recommends mindful practices that help balance the doshas and bring the mind back into a state of harmony. So, here are some of these techniques that you might consider for yourself. So there is gratitude journaling. This is a simple practice that helps to shift focus away from loss and towards appreciation. So by writing down 3 things you're grateful for each day, you cultivate a mindset of abundance. And you can even start to write gratitude for what you're looking forward to in the transition, gratitude of the life and the body that you've had that is bringing you through this transition. So, gratitude journaling can be such a beautiful practice to do, and it also helps you connect back to self. And remember, this transition phase is all about that deeper connection to self. Self-compassion techniques. So during this transition, it's really crucial to be gentle with yourself. Practice self-compassion by recognizing the changes you're going through without judgment. So sometimes you have to say to yourself, yep, I'm having a hot flush. This is annoying, but I'm not going to judge that this is happening. Or I forgot what you said a million times over. I know my low levels of progesterone and my vata imbalance are creating this brain fog going on, but I'm not going to be judgmental because I am going through a real change, a real transition in my mind and body. And another beautiful practice is to meditate on inner wisdom. So, meditating on chitta, so that inner wisdom, helps you connect with your higher self and gain clarity on what your next phase in life should look like. So, techniques such as candle gazing can calm vata imbalances, while that shitali breath that I spoke about can really pacify pitta. So, really incorporating some of these mindful practices is a game changer for going through this transition period. And don't forget how I mentioned that, cortisol imbalances will really impact this transition. And these are all techniques that are going to help maintain cortisol balance as well. Now we want to look at these strategies for mental resilience because our mental resilience can be tested due to different hormonal shifts. So the first one is emotional awareness. The first step to mental resilience is becoming aware of how your emotions are linked to doshic imbalances. So for example, if you notice feelings of irritability or frustration, you can say this might be a pitta imbalance. So now what will I do to balance that pitta dosha? While anxiety or scattered thoughts may point to a vata imbalance. So, what would I do if I was in a vata imbalance? And it comes back to those things we discussed earlier, having more grounding and nourishing foods, grounding and nourishing practices, some different herbs that can support the vata. Once you identify these tendencies, you can start to adopt balancing strategies. As I mentioned, grounding pacifies vata, cooling for excess pitta, and to help restore emotional equilibrium. And maybe it needs to be more fire and heat for a kapha imbalance or more movement. We also need to look at empowered actions through setting boundaries to create mental resilience. Now more than ever, it's important to set boundaries and prioritize self care. This stage of life calls for saying no more often to tasks, people, and habits that drain your energy. And it's all about reclaiming your time and honoring your own needs. As I mentioned, we are going through a shift in a pitta phase of life, which is all about being driven, goal orientated, accumulating our assets, working, and we're moving from a pitta phase of life into a vata phase of life. In the West, we don't do this very well. We don't slow down. We don't listen to our body. We just keep working and having goals like we did in the pitta phase of life. And so we often get a lot of pitta also trapped in our body. That's where that frustration, the irritability, those hot flushes can come from as well. And so what I've found with a lot of my clients is when they really honor their own needs and they start to put in boundaries with themselves and the people around them, they give themselves a little bit of permission just to slow down and enjoy life more. And a lot of their symptoms start to slow down as well, which is beautiful. We have to remember that self-care isn't selfish, it is essential. So prioritizing rest and enjoying activities that bring you joy and allowing yourself time for reflection can go a long way in maintaining mental and emotional health. And then last pillar we come to in the higher self methodology is dharmic impact. As we move into the final section, we want to talk about embracing wise womanhood and the potential for creating a lasting impact during this phase of your life. So we're entering, as we mentioned, this new phase of wise womanhood, this beautiful new phase of life. In Ayurveda, life is divided into stages, and menopause marks the transition from the householder stage or grasta stage to the retired spiritual stage, which is the vanaprastha stage. Now, because we are working later and longer, we don't retire as soon as we hit menopause. We know that in the West, we don't generally do that, but we do need to slow down and shift our perspective. And so this stage is often looked as more of that spiritual stage, which is why I keep talking about stepping into that wise womanhood. This shift is about turning inward, seeking deeper meaning, and embracing spiritual growth. It's a time to let go of the external roles and define us and explore the inner wisdom we've accumulated over the years. And if you think about it, you have accumulated so much inner wisdom, and maybe it's sitting there ready to be shared and ready to come to the surface, but we've kind of just accumulated it all and we haven't really allowed it to step into part of us, yeah, and what we can share. In Ayurveda, we also look at the concept of dharma, which refers to a life purpose, a higher calling, and brings meaning and fulfillment to your life. But it also just refers living in the right way, taking the right action every single day. So it's really about living in alignment with your true self and using your unique talents and experiences to contribute to the world. This stage of life is a perfect time to reconnect with your Dharma. It's an opportunity to pursue passions that you may have put on hold. So you might want to start new projects or mentor others. You might use this time to take all that inner wisdom and start mentoring a younger generation or mentoring someone in your field. When you live in alignment with your Dharma, you're not only enriching your own life, but you can create a ripple effect that inspires and uplifts your community. So I know even for my mum in this phase of her life, she has become a koala rescuer. Yes, she is living her Dharma so on purpose, attending to all of the koalas in need, and she's just adopted 2 wallaby orphans as well. And she is putting all of her purpose into helping the wildlife of Australia, which is just such a beautiful thing because she's been able to transition into this phase of her life and she's found a whole new meaning in this phase. And I think it's really important for women, especially if they have children or they have this like bustling career, they move through that part of their life and the children move out of home, their career starts to slow down, and it's like, what now? This is where they can start to feel lost and lost in retirement. We've seen that like so many times. But if you can connect to this dharma or this purpose or how you can contribute positively to the world, this part can be So significant and so, so special, and makes such a difference in your life and the life of others. Making an impact is about connecting with others. So it is wonderful time to form or join groups where you can share experiences, wisdom, and support each other through this transition. There is such great power in community. So connect with women going through this with you. Maybe you start a book club. Maybe you do crosswork. Maybe you have a walking club. Maybe you guys all meet up for a beautiful ocean swim, or maybe it's just a coffee or a chai latte and chat about the transition period, just so you're not alone. It's really about connecting. Another important aspect is self-expression and creativity. Embracing creativity as a means to self-express yourself, whether that's in art, writing, or a new hobby. Creative pursuits can be really healing and fulfilling, allowing you to share your inner world with others. So if you've always had the desire to draw or to paint or to do anything creative, this is such a brilliant time to do it. And it really helps keep that creative part of your mind active, which sometimes can go a little dormant as we get older. So it is so important. And here are some practical ways to live your Dharma in this transition period and through to menopause. As I mentioned, mentorship is such a beautiful way. Mentorship and teaching, sharing your skills and experiences, whether through that is speaking at informal events or in your communities that you've created, or whether that's through writing, blogging. Maybe you're writing your own personal memoir. Your journey can inspire and guide others. So do not discount the life that you've experienced and the life that you're going to experience. Share yourself, share your wisdom with others. You are stepping into this wise womanhood aspect of your life. So your wisdom is needed now more than ever. And continue integrating Ayurvedic principles into your daily life, not just for your own well-being, but to inspire others to embrace holistic health. I have seen the most amazing transformations happen from my clients who have come to see me through perimenopause all the way through to their menopause stage, and they are living a more healthier, beautiful, abundant, holistic life now than they ever were in their 20s. Like, this can be a time where you're actually really enjoying yourself, really enjoying your health as well. So don't think that anything is on the decline. It could actually be on the incline. I hope that you have enjoyed this little talk on the transition through from perimenopause through to menopause. If you do have any questions or comments, please reach out to me on Instagram at Harmony Inspired Ayurveda, or come and join our Facebook group, the Ayurveda and Women's Health Sisterhood, and we can continue the conversation in there. Thank you so much. Namaste.